This is the Comedy Room where we talk about sitcoms and the people behind them. A bit of a delay to this month's episode, for which we apologise, but we have got a bit of an extra special episode for you this month. We're going to be focusing on Lee Mack and how the show Not Going Out made him into a household name. But before we move on to that, we've got a mystery year to discuss with you. And first, I was going to run through a few bits and pieces about that.
Yes. Now, you'll have to remind me what the year is because it's been such a long time and I've forgotten.
I'm not going to make the obvious remark. But our mystery year generator did give us a bit of a curveball.
Yeah.
Yes, the comedy wasteland that was 2004.
Yes. Now, so just before we go on to the comedy, the other bits and pieces, TV. I know it's not really comedy, but we'll just sort of fill it out. TV. Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper was announced as Doctor and the Rose. Now, the reason I've included this is because it's a lot of comedy actors do tend to appear in Doctor Who nowadays. Bradley Walsh, John Bishop, Lee Mack. But they were announced as Doctor and Rose in 2004. Possibly we're due an announcement for 2 new people imminently. So by the time this podcast actually is live, we might know who the next Doctor is. Strictly Come Dancing. There's a few comedians get on there. And Bill Bailey, he was one, wasn't he? And he won it. He started off as the joke act, but I think he surprised a lot of people by actually winning Strictly Come Dancing. I don't actually watch it. Do you, Andy?
No. We're not fans of Strictly in this house, unfortunately.
I don't know why I even asked that question. I think I knew the answer before I asked it. And in film, the top 5 grossing films of 2004 were Harry Potter and the Prisoner Azkaban. I never watched any Harry Potter. The Passion of Christ, Spider-Man 2, and the top 2 films were a couple of cartoons. The Incredibles and Shrek 2. Now, the Shrek franchise, I do enjoy. They're quite comedic, aren't they?
Yeah, from what I've seen, I've not really massively sat down and watched Shrek. I'll watch it if it's on TV, which inevitably seems to be every Christmas. But
yeah, it does nowadays. It's the new Great Escape, I think. Shrek.
Yeah.
Music, I suppose, in a way, it was probably comedy what people are buying because the top acts of 2004 were McFly, Natasha Bedingfield, Britney Spears, and Usher. Now, apart from McFly, who I've seen live, I shouldn't say that out loud onto a medium that everyone can take the mickey, but the wife loves them and I saw them when they joined forces were busted. I did get free tickets, so it wasn't like I paid money. And sport, we had Best Mate won Cheltenham Gold Cup, Greece won Euro 2004, and Arsenal remained unbeaten in the league all season. And that's the year 2004. So it just gives a little bit of precursor to what we're talking about 2004. Back over to you, pal.
Yeah, so the shows that we're watching, the new ones that we got were Live at the Apollo, which is an excellent show, still going. Shameless, a show that I've never actually seen. Doc Martin, which I didn't realise was a comedy.
I didn't realise that until Comedy UK or whatever it is that I pop onto has it on there as a show. So I've not seen it myself. It's got Martin Clunes in it. People I've spoken to think it's more of a drama than a comedy, but what's it doing on a comedy website? That's what I say.
But one show that I think is pretty underrated, especially as in the sort of legacy of comedy shows of the era, Worst Week of My Life. Absolutely fantastic show and really doesn't get the attention it deserves. Nighty Night made its debut in 2004 and a show that I think is very much kind of unfairly maligned. Shane, the Frank Skinner sitcom.
Yes.
The worst thing about it was the fact that the theme tune is sung by Frank Skinner, the one with the worst voice of the two on the two guest vocalists on Three Lions. You've got the Lightning Seeds, brilliant band, and then you've got Frank Skinner and David Baddiel both trying to sing badly.
Yeah. So he's topped the charts more times than some people who can actually sing.
That wouldn't be difficult.
Yeah. Did you know about Shane that they I don't know if it's true or not, but he actually recorded a second series. He fell out of ITV and it's never been broadcast.
Yeah, I've heard him mention it because he actually mentions it on his radio show. He recorded the second series, but since that time, really, really sort of fell out of love with the show. He absolutely hates it, and if anyone mentions it, he goes absolutely. He goes off on one about it. He absolutely hates the show. There's a few sort of instances of things where people get really sort of bitter about shows. If you ever see much of Leah Thompson of Back to the Future fame, she was in a show called Caroline in the City, a show that I absolutely adore.
Yes.
The last series of that show is absolutely abysmal and has a terrible ending. I'm not going to tell anybody what the ending is, but it's awful. And even now, it's a sore subject for her 20 odd years on.
Well, here's a little bit of a fleeting statement across all genres. American writers do not know how to end a TV series properly.
I'd go for that. I would definitely go for that. Never ever watched the last series of an American sitcom ever.
I'm dramas as well. I just think it's something in their blood. They don't know how to end a series.
Case in point, The Big Bang Theory. Don't watch the last series of The Big Bang Theory. It is shocking. They literally get every single story out that they've got, and it's like, we've got to finish them right now. It's like, no, you don't. Leave some things to the imagination of the viewers, please. Just don't watch the last series of The Big Bang Theory if you value your own sanity. Films in 2004, we got one absolute classic and one not so much. So the absolute comedy film of the year, without doubt, Shaun of the Dead.
Brilliant film.
Absolutely love it. I've seen it numerous times. Absolutely adore that film. But Shaun of the Dead is probably one of the British comedy films of recent years.
Yeah, it's probably in the top 10 best British films of all time, I think.
I'd go for that.
Yeah.
But it was so funny, and it made household names of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost. But as well as that, you'll see all kinds of other people sort of turning up and be like, oh, I recognize that person. Oh, I recognize that person as well.
Yeah, the little cameos were amazing, weren't they? There was so many on there.
Yeah. And, if you're a real kind of sitcom fan or a comedy fan in general, the number of times you'll see people and be like, oh, you're in there, are you? It's absolutely fantastic. But we also got treated to the ridiculous end of British comedy with the release of Sex Lives of the Potato Men.
Now, I went to see this at the cinema. I didn't mean to. I was meeting a girl on a date to see something else that was on, and she never turned up. And in the queue for Sex Lives of the Potato Men were a couple of mates of mine. So rather than go and watch a film that I didn't really want to see anyway, with nobody who turned up, I just went and sat with my mates on this one. I think I got done twice that night.
All I'm going to say is I think that you did well to beat Mrs. Verzo on the basis that you never had to watch films like that again.
Yeah, it's now Johnny Vegas was in it, wasn't he? And Mackenzie Crook, who a great value, but in that film, I think they were probably scared that that was the last thing they were ever going to be offered, so they took it.
Yeah. The thing is, there are so many sort of with British comedy films. We have very much kind of sublime and ridiculous. So for every sort of Life of Brian, there's always going to be some really, really terrible British comedy film. There's just too many to name.
Yeah, I think they even got lottery funding for Sex Lives. I don't know who made that decision.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I was hoping to kind of pay them not to make it.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
But one thing we did actually get the last of, we got the last series of Our Weird the Same Pet. They'd actually rebooted that. And it was sort of reuniting the cast or the remains of the cast. And
first two series of that, greatest British television ever made. Series 3 and 4 and the special, it was a reminiscent bit. I class them as two separate series, basically. The first two series were amazing. 3, 4 and the specials were, thanks for the ride, here's a bit of bonus material, you know?
Never actually seen the first two series of Our Weird the Same Pet.
Oh, it's great.
I've seen bits of it. I've seen bits of it, but never actually.
Series 1 is 40 years old next year. 1983 it first came out, so it'd be 40 years old.
Jeez. So I've never seen it because obviously I was too young to see it first time around.
Yeah.
And repeats were a bit thin on the ground.
Unfortunately, I wasn't.
It was 15 stories high. Bo Selector and Hardware got its final series as well.
Oh, Bo Selector was another series that had, I think it ran for 40 episodes. I think it had 39 episodes too many.
Bo Selector was brilliant.
Oh, I thought it was awful. I think Lee Francis, I just think he's a one-trick pony and he's not funny. And his one trick is woeful, but that's my opinion.
I'm just for any listeners now, I'm scrambling for the end record button so I can leave this recording. I think, to be fair, I think Lee Francis is hilarious because he has this whole sort of outrageous persona, and it's this whole thing of, you know, I'm going to be completely outrageous. Normally, I hate character comedy, but as Keith Lemon, he's really, really funny, but in a really sort of guilty pleasure kind of way. You know, it's kind of, you know, it's sort of crude humor. You know, it's kind of really sort of OTT and a bit sort of naff, but it sort of works.
We'll have to disagree on that one.
Yeah, I guess so. But that was the year 2004.
Well, Hardware, I did cut you in when you was about to talk to Hardware. Did you enjoy Hardware? Have you seen it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was a Simon Nye comedy, wasn't it? Who Men Behaving Badly fame.
I actually prefer it to Men Behaving Badly.
I did enjoy it. Martin Freeman, that's possibly one of his first roles after The Office, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'll watch anything that's got Martin Freeman in.
He's great.
Yeah.
And Ken Morley, the fella who was Reg Holsworth in Coronation Street, he was in it.
Bit of a local celebrity around these parts is Ken Morley. I remember seeing him. In his. He had a Rolls Royce at one time, which I remember seeing as a kid, and being really impressed that somebody would have this this ultra rare car as it was.
Yeah, is he still about?
I've no idea. I'm guessing he must be somewhere.
Yeah,
but yeah, he's probably one of these ex-Coronation Street stars that turns up at random things.
He is. I've just clicked his name, and he's Chorley, which is your neck of the woods. and he's age 79. So he's and he's still with us.
Ah.
Last seen in Celebrity Big Brother back in 2015.
Ah, okay. He must be must be enjoying his later years.
I don't recall him being in Hello, do you?
Not
General Leopold von Flockenstuffen in Hello.
Try saying that after his gameful.
I think I said that quite well, actually.
I'll ask you to do that after a night out. How's that?
Yeah, I might rewatch Hello. I used to enjoy that.
Well, that was something I've only ever watched on repeats because obviously, hello, I was. When was that? What sort of year was that?
Oh, that was possibly very early 80s, wasn't it? I'd say.
Yeah.
81, 82.
Yeah.
About 10 years.
Yeah. So I would have been just about born. And so I'm limited to repeats on that one. But yeah. So 2004 game was an interesting comedy, didn't it?
Yeah, I do digress. I apologize there.
So with the interesting comedy of 2004 out of the way, let's move on to our comedy hero this month. And we've mentioned one person that is from these neck of the woods, but this particular month's comedy hero wasn't in Coronation Street, but he was actually a former employee of a certain Ginger McCann, the racehorse trainer, and has actually been a household name courtesy of a show that started in 2006 and is still running. So this month's comedy hero is Lee Mack. So he made his TV debut hosting a stand-up show on Channel 4 called Gas. That was about 97, 98 sort of time. And that was actually a really, really interesting show to get because of how many people that went on to be massive, massive stars were on that show themselves. So Lee Mack used to host it, but you'd have really sort of big, future big names on there. So I remember seeing Noel Fielding on there, Lucy Porter, Jim Tavares, I think, was on there, Chris Addison, basically anyone that was sort of up and coming in comedy in the late 90s would be on there. They had a really good sort of group of comedians that would appear on there.
I don't recall it.
Late night Channel 4 during the week, I think it was a Thursday. It used to be on like really kind of late at night, so I used to record it. It was really, really good. It was better than pretty much anything else that was on at the time. But 1999 was his first appearance on They Think It's All Over.
Oh, I used to enjoy that. I used to like that, yeah.
They Think It's All Over actually went through a bit of an evolution. So I think sort of late 90s, that this was sort of after Lee Hurst left. Did someone say good riddance?
Yeah.
But it was when sort of Nick Hancock was still presenting, Roy McGrath was still on it. I think Lee Mack was on there sort of around about the same sort of era as Jonathan Ross, made quite a few appearances. Yeah, because they used to have David Gower and Gary Lineker as team captains, didn't they?
They did, originally when it first started. Yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking Boris Becker might have turned up at one stage.
Yeah, Boris Becker was towards the end.
Oh, was he?
Yes. Yeah, he was towards the end, and Ian Wright was around that same sort of era.
I think that was panel shows, they weren't in their infancy, but they suddenly started becoming mainstream, didn't they?
Yeah, it was very much a case of that was one of the first real sort of long running ones. But the first kind of glimpse of Lee Mack's actual kind of trademark comedy that most of us actually saw was the sketch show. That started in 2001, ran through to 2004. So this was centered around Lee Mack, Tim Vine, Jim Tavares, and Karen Taylor. In the first series, they had Ronnie Ancona, who has done a lot of work with Alistair McGowan.
Yeah.
Things like Dead Ringers. And series 2, they had Kitty Flanagan, the Australian comedian. She mostly works in Australia again now. She went back quite a few years ago. It started off as a show at Edinburgh Fringe, 99, I think it was. It was Lee Mack, Catherine Tate, and a guy called Dan Antopolsky. He's done all sorts of all kinds of stand-up and things. He's very sort of similar to Bill Bailey, but he's done all sorts of things. He's predominantly sort of stand-up, and also he does some radio stuff as well.
I never watched the sketch show, or I might have watched bits of it. It's not one that sticks in my mind, but do you think that's where the idea for Not Going Out come from between Lee Mack and Tim Vine? Do you think maybe, or
similar sort of humor?
Yeah.
But there was a lot of people involved in the writing of it. So it's predominantly Lee Mack, but Jimmy Carr was involved. Ricky Gervais was involved. Daniel Mayer was involved as well. Those who aren't aware, Daniel Mayer does a lot of stuff with Charlie Brooker. So he co-wrote Touch of Cloth.
A lot of satire, yeah.
Yes. I mean, Charlie Brooker's absolutely fantastic, but
that's satire is one of my favourite brands of comedy, actually.
Yeah, anything that Charlie Brooker does, it's absolutely brilliant, but that's a whole other show. But the show itself, the sketch show, actually got an American version, which Kelsey Grammer was heavily involved in.
That always worries me when you say they've done an American version, because nothing good track record, have they?
You just hate American comedy.
Yeah, different types of humor, isn't it? Doesn't.
Yeah, but yeah, there's not a lot of shows that Kelsey Grammer that have been bad, to be fair. But sketch show ran to 2004, and then 2006 was when things really sort of took off, because Not Going Out started. And as we record this, we're on the 25th of March. And tonight is the start of a new series of Not Going Out. Series 12 starts in the UK tonight.
It's actually a little bit of irony here. I'm actually going out tonight.
I'm not. So Not Going Out, I would say, is probably my favorite modern sitcom. But it has sort of a couple of different distinct eras. So as a fan of the show, I'd say, well, a lot of people say there's two eras, the Docklands era and the Walton-on-Thames era. I'd go further. I'd say there's actually three eras to it. There's the era where it's Lee and his landlady Kate living in the flat. And then the Docklands era, I would say, starts in series 2, because that is when Lucy is introduced. So the storyline is that Tim, who is Lee's best friend, and Kate have broken up. And at the end of series 1, the idea is that she's gone back to America, and it's Tim's sister Lucy that takes over the flat. And the show kind of really sort of takes a turn from that point. So instead of all kind of like the sort of American and British sort of rivalry type humor, a lot is sort of aimed at specifically the characters themselves and sort of the situations that they get themselves in. It's usually that Lee gets himself into some sort of scrape, and Lucy has to get him out of said scrape. And it's a really kind of, it's almost like an old-fashioned sort of humor, kind of really sort of like one-liners and sort of everything's very quick. But there's always sort of one character that's sort of the center of the majority of the jokes. And then there's a sort of will they, won't they sort of romance to it, where Lee has to admit to himself his feelings for Lucy, and then has to admit to Lucy his feelings for Lucy. And it's sort of like an open secret that everybody knows except for her.
Yeah.
And then what happens is there's series 8 onwards, where there is a time lapse of 7 years in the future. And they end up married with 3 children.
Oh.
So that is when the show sort of dynamic really sort of changes, and it becomes pretty much, I would say, if Lee Mack had written Outnumbered, that's sort of how it goes. So a lot of it is that there's all sorts of scrapes that Lee gets into, and Lucy has to get him out of. But it does introduce new characters.
Yeah, I will say I've watched the first series. I really enjoyed it. But then I saw Miranda Hart joined, and I couldn't watch anymore.
I'm not the world's biggest Miranda Hart fan, but her part in Not Going Out is quite subtle.
So do you think I should grow up and just get over it and watch it, series 2?
The thing is, she doesn't do a massive amount in it because she's the cleaner. She's not sort of at the center of a lot of things.
Okay. Yeah, Miranda and Mrs. Brown's Boys bring me out in hives, I think.
I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not going to take any responsibility for spontaneous listener vomiting.
No.
But from series 8 onwards, we get some new characters. And we get the introduction of Toby and Anna, who are next door neighbours. Now, Toby is played by Hugh Dennis. I've made no secret of the fact I'm a massive, massive, massive Hugh Dennis fan. Going back to sort of Mary Whitehouse and Punt and Dennis. The latter I watched as a teenager. And Toby is this is a GP who is very sort of he's very sort of henpecked and very sort of daren't speak up for himself. Whereas Anna speaks for everyone in the world. Ever. She's a really sort of horrible, obnoxious character. And Abigail Cruttenden plays her brilliantly.
I like her. Yeah.
She's so funny. Because she plays this really, really nasty character. And you think the idea that, you know, Lucy's parents sort of disapprove of Lee would be the sort of where the nastiness towards him would come from. Whereas Anna has nastiness for everybody. And you sort of see this whole idea that Toby's got to kind of put up with this. And there's jokes about him sort of never really speaking up for himself or never standing up to her or anything like that. But it is such a brilliant show. There's Bobby Ball actually is in it from. It starts in series 8. Unfortunately, Bobby Ball passed away in 2020, and it's been mentioned that there may be a funeral for Frank, Bobby Ball's character, in this new series, and a rumor that Tommy Cannon's going to play the vicar.
Oh, be nice.
So when Bobby Ball's real funeral happened, it was in the middle of COVID. So there's been all sorts of rumors that there could be sort of like an on-screen funeral as kind of like a tribute to him. Because Lee Mack actually said that Bobby Ball was actually a friend of his as well as sort of like a hero. So I would not be surprised to see something sort of made in that respect.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of wordplay, a lot of double entendre in there. It's all very, very deadpan. It's really, really funny. So if anybody hasn't sort of seen it, it's on iPlayer at the minute. So we do have quite a lot of listeners outside the UK. So if you were to obtain a VPN, you might be able to access that if that's what you choose to do. You know, we don't advocate or promote any services on this podcast, but if that's something you have or you choose to use, then that is something that's available to you. There is a lot of DVD releases of various series that aren't particularly expensive. So if you wanted to try a few out and make use of various sites, global shipping programs, then again, you can do that. But I said, well worth watching. And that was something that really sort of propelled Lee Mack into kind of the public consciousness, especially as the majority of it was shown on Friday nights. So Friday night prime time, you're going to sit down, you're going to watch a sitcom, and here's this guy sort of delivering these kind of really quick one-liners. It's going to be pretty much ingrained in your consciousness that who this guy is. Then 2007, Would I Lie to You? He joined that and has been a regular team captain ever since. So, you know, that's further sort of propelling him into the kind of public consciousness. You know, Rob Brydon, everyone knows who he is from various bits and pieces, especially like Gavin and Stacey. David Mitchell, everyone's really, really familiar with who he is. And then here's this guy who's kind of regularly kind of trolling them both, along with various other celebrities that are the victims of his wit of the last sort of 15 years or so. He's done bits on Have I Got News for You? He's been on Never Mind the Buzzcocks. He's been on 8 out of 10 Casters Countdown.
Any sort of comedy panel show, he seems to have been on them, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's done 8 episodes of QI. He's done. He did. He wants the celebrity Let's Play darts.
Yeah, local
And
television.
he's also been. I'm sure he's been on. Who do you think you are? And also, he actually wrote his autobiography as well, called Mac the Life.
Back to life, I like that. Great pun, that.
He's really, really funny live. I've actually seen him live.
But
So
you've actually been in a theatre and seen him, have you?
yes, it was the Apollo in Manchester.
Yeah.
So yeah, we alluded to a kind of change in the series between a couple of different eras. And it was series 7, I believe, was the cliffhanger. And I actually saw him live the day after that was broadcast. And he does a bit of the show where he asks the audience to give him, for questions. And somebody actually asked about the series finale and made reference to what happened. And somebody actually shouted some expletives of, I haven't seen that yet.
Spoilers.
But it had already been broadcast. So, of course, who's going to be on the receiving end of the joke? The guy who hasn't seen it. Something along the lines of, you've not watched the show, but you're here tonight, sort of thing. But it's like, and I think you said something like, well, the rest of them have watched it. And of course, we all had. But yeah, he also made the show Semi-Detached, which was a show that he was in. It was a bit weird. It was a bit strange show. Don't think there's going to be a second series of it. But he was also in Taskmaster.
Oh, that was one of my favourite series, actually.
That was a really, really good show. He was alongside. He was alongside podcast favorite Charlotte Ritchie, and Mike Wozniak was on there as well.
Yes.
It was really, really a standout.
Sarah Kendall.
Sarah Kendall is hilarious. She's so funny.
Just recently replied to a tweet I sent her.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she got this show. It's like comedy drama-ish in Australia. I think it's a thing between Australia and UK called Frayed.
All right.
Frayed. And her life is split between London and Australia. And the series 2 just aired and it finished on a cliffhanger. So what's his name from Last Leg?
Adam Hills.
Pardon?
Adam Hills,
yeah. Adam Hills tweeted and put her in it that he's just watched series 2 and it's brilliant. So I just replied to all, I agree. Any news on series 3? And then she replied, I find out very soon.
Ooh, friend of the stars.
It's always nice when the stars you tweet actually respond to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jamali Maddox was on as well, wasn't he?
Oh, yes. One of the few contestants ever to give Greg Davis as good as he got back.
Yeah.
Because obviously the whole thing with Taskmaster, as I'm sure many of our listeners will attest to, is the fact that Greg Davis is very, very good at giving stick to contestants.
Yeah.
Especially that series, most of them would pretty much just take it. Mike Wozniak isn't a sort of argumentative type. Charlotte Ritchie, definitely not. Lee Mack would just be sarcastic to him, whereas Jamali Maddox would just absolutely rip him to shreds. and
See,
almost kind of made him scared because he knew that he wasn't going to get all his own way.
a lot on that show that he makes his stooge, like on that series that's Mike Wozniak and previous ones like Ed Gamble.
Yeah,
they're sort of best mates, aren't they? So,
yes.
so he has a different relationship with the likes of Mike Wozniak and Ed Gamble than he does with Jamali Maddox, Lee Mack, because he's not overly pally with them. So it's a good dynamic.
Yeah, definitely. And anybody who's not watched Taskmaster or not seen much of it, please go and watch it. It's hilarious.
Yeah, it is one of the best shows. Now, do you know I know we're going off on a tangent, but have you seen the cast for Series 13 that's coming out soon?
I've not actually.
Ardal O'Hanlon, Bridget Christie, Chris Ramsey, Judy Love, and Sophie Ducker. Of them names, the only one that I'm not familiar with is Bridget Christie.
Not massively familiar.
Judy Love gets on Last Leg quite a lot, and Sophie Ducker does that news show that Frankie Boyle does. And obviously everyone knows who Ardal O'Hanlon is, and Chris Ramsey's quite popular nowadays, isn't he?
Yeah, Chris Ramsey does the podcast with his good lady wife.
One of my sisters thinks he's the best thing since sliced bread.
He is very funny.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that she puts him in his place, though. I think both him and Rosie are absolutely hilarious. And of course, Ardal O'Hanlon, who is best known for a little TV show of the 90s in which he played a superhero. I jest, of course. My Hero was a brilliant show, but he is, of course, known as Dougal from Father Ted.
Yeah, he'd always be Father Dougal when he brilliant character.
Brilliant show. Yeah, brilliant show. And I remember actually seeing the stand-up routine he did where he got a taxi home from Dublin Airport, which would be great if he'd got a taxi to Dublin Airport when he left home. And everyone in Ireland sort of remembers him as Dougal and recognises him as Dougal. So they expect him to be like Dougal.
Yeah.
So when he leaves his car in the airport car park and has to wait for the taxi to leave so he can ring another one to go back to the airport to pick up his car. If ever you get the chance to see any sort of Ardal O'Hanlon stand-up, please watch it. He's absolutely hilarious. There's a whole episode that could be done about Father Ted and the various Irish comedians that were in it.
Yeah, definitely.
The personal highlight being Frank Kelly, who was a Shakespearean actor.
Yes, one of my nieces, we call her Father Jack because when she was a baby, she had hair like him, and all she would shout out is "drink."
Of all the things, at least it was that.
Yes, and if she ever listens to this, I think she'll metaphorically kill me for telling the world that we called her Father Jack. Still now, and she's married with children.
Note to self: try and find Verzo's niece on social media.
I have, I don't know how many. I've got at least a dozen nieces. So good luck.
Don't challenge me. If anybody has any sort of clues as to who Verzo's niece is, and would like me to assist me in stitching Verzo up, please tweet the podcast. We can, and on that same subject, I may have a vacancy for a co-host, but there's definitely an illustrious career there of shows that have involved Lee Mack. And I say, if anyone has not seen Not Going Out, I don't know how you could not have seen Not Going Out. Definitely don't know how anyone could have done that if they like comedy.
Yeah,
Then,
you understand my reasons for stalling on series 2, though, don't you?
yeah.
Yeah,
But
good.
all I'm going to say is you will thank me for advising you to watch what's the rest of it. If you do like Not Going Out, if you haven't seen the stand-up comedy of Tim Vine, then you really do need to check it out. It's very, very similar humor. Very sort of rapid fire, sort of one-liners and puns and all this sort of stuff. Yeah, it's the show sort of made him a kind of household name as well. So if you do get a chance, I recommend going through his entire back catalogue of DVDs. The latest one being Sunset Milk Idiot. But yeah, that was Lee Mack. Our next comedy hero, we are going to leave you in suspense until the 1st of May as to who that's going to be. But we're also going to have some mystery shows that we are going to discuss. We had a little bit of an accident with the random year generator. It may have been incinerated or burned or both simultaneously. But we will be bringing you some mystery shows and a new comedy hero on the 1st of May. So that was Lee Mack and his ascent to status as household name, courtesy of a very long-running sitcom. So it just remains for us to thank everybody for listening and sticking with us. We hope you have a wonderful rest of the month, and we will see you all back on the 1st of May.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone, and hopefully the random sitcom generator won't produce Miranda or Mrs. Brown's Boys. So thanks for listening, and see you all soon.